Thank you for joining the Fred Hampton Leftist podcast. This is James Fauntleroy with the JB Show. I am your host, and I have a very special guest with me today. We have Kobi Azoulay, and he is joining us for a conversation that we'll be having on many different topics. We'll be discussing Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, the two-party duopoly, you name it. So we're actually going to have a really great conversation. Kobi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. A little bit tired, but I've got my energy juice here, so I'm ready to go.
Okay, it's good because I thought you may have had it intravenously, just to make things.
What'd you say there? It cut out for a sec. What'd you say?
I said I thought you might have it intravenously, just so it can have a faster track into your bloodstream.
After staying up late last night watching that North Korea documentary, I think I might have needed that. So.
You know what? First, before we get into anything, that photo that you shared on
Pyongyang
on Twitter, that made me go crazy. And I was just like, what in the hell? I'm like, is that North Korea?
It's like, the US government kind of hides the reality of what it's like for people who live there. So, we see a beautiful picture like that and it's like, whoa, like we're on the other side of the curtain. Maybe it's not so bad over there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just like, wait a minute. That was just gorgeous.
I would say I wish we could have more discourse that, when we're talking about North Korea, not just talking about the North Korean government, but like the North Korean people and their architecture, their art, just learning more about them as people, which I think will help us humanize them and make war less likely.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on. Let me see if I can share this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this is basically what I was referring to. And I am just like floored because when you look at this, you think, oh, that's got to be some like cool metropolitan city, maybe abroad, but it's you think it's a quote unquote free country. And then you look at the flag and you're like, wait a minute, what flag is that? And then you look it up and you're like, holy shit, that's North Korea.
And isn't it amazing that they were able to do all this, even with the U.S. sanctions, making it so that they don't have enough money and resources to do a lot of things. They've still managed to rebuild their cities from the Korean War.
Exactly. And I'm shocked because I just had no idea that, North Korea looked like that. And it's funny because, and there was a picture where somebody had the subway in New York as it was flooding, and they compared it to one in China. And the Chinese subway was immaculate. Beautiful.
Oh, wait, it was like comparing a first world country to a third world country, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of reminds me, I saw the same thing. I think it was a Russian train system where it was like, had a chandelier and all this like modern architecture everywhere. Then you compare it to just basically any metro in the US and it doesn't look anything like it. Our infrastructure is so outdated.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I was like, when I first saw that today, I'm like, hold up, we're going to have to pause on Julian Assange just for 1 second. Because
I'm okay with that.
I'm just like looking at this. I'm like, holy shit, man, we got so much work to do in this country. Like, just imagine with the resources that we actually have, what we can actually do.
Oh, yeah. We're the richest country in the history of the world. And yet our infrastructure is this outdated. People don't have health care. I mean, it's like, that's what's just crazy to me. We have so much money, so many resources, and then they pretend they can't do those things. Like, what? If those other countries can do those things, if a place like North Korea, under the foot of all these sanctions from all these superpowers, can make their cities look like that, can build infrastructure, I think we definitely can. There's no excuses.
I think this is also, I also want to make this a stream of not just because I know we shit on, our own country because of the disparities that it has, and rightly so. but I also want to inspire, and I think it'll be cool if we can also kind of intersect of what could be and what we could have, and kind of get ourselves excited about the future, because we're fighting for it. So we might as well start speaking as if it's going to be coming.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I
Because
want to do that.
if we're only defeatist about it, if we're only focused on the bad things without what could be afterwards, we're kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot and doing a self-fulfilling prophecy of it not happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, dude, I'm so glad you came on today. This is awesome. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm getting all heated up and warmed up, ready to go now.
All right, we're getting warmed up in here. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm so silly. But okay, so Julian Assange. For a lot of people who are watching right now, Julian Assange is a journalist. Okay. This journalist, Julian Assange, came up with a website called WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks is basically a site that takes information that is leaked from various different countries around the world and maybe even companies. And they leak this information because there are things that people need to know in regards to their nations that their government or companies aren't telling them. And so this is what Julian Assange did, and he did it for us here in the United States. He not only did it regarding our government, but also our political parties within our country. So, because of that, the United States government did not like it because it basically showed how the sausage was made. And because we saw how the sausage was made, we got pissed. And we are now more wary of our government, which means that we are realizing we're not as free as we really are. So, did I give kind of a good synopsis of
what that was?
I
think that, and it kind of connects really well, I feel like, to the last topic we were talking about too with North Korea, where it's like, our government wants us to believe certain narratives and certain ways of thinking about things as if it's objective truth, and you see it through mainstream media, the narratives they push. But as WikiLeaks proved, there are things they're not telling us behind the scenes that, when it sees the light of day, it kind of blows a hole in their narrative that their truth is the only objective truth. And so like in 2016, the DNC leaks that were released, I think in August of that year, they showed how the Democratic Party was, the leadership of the Democratic Party was communicating with the Clinton campaign and communicating with the mainstream media in order to push certain anti-Bernie, pro-Hillary narratives.
Yeah.
And it even went as far, and this is one of the most famous emails people talk about, the Pied Piper strategy that the Democratic Party pushed in 2016. It's very ironic because they blame Julian Assange for electing Donald Trump. But if you read those emails and you see the Pied Piper strategy, the Democratic Party was purposely trying to elevate candidates like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz because they thought they were more beatable. They thought they were so ridiculous, there's no way we'll lose to those candidates. And they did. And so go ahead.
No, I was going to say that there was a third. Was it Herman Cain?
That was the third person in the Pied Piper. And they wanted to downplay people like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio and the more serious establishment, the ones they thought were threatening to them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you see now how the Mitt Romneys of the Republican Party, the Jeb Bushes of the Republican Party, are like largely Democrats now. You know what I mean? So it's almost interesting because they were threatened by them because they're more similar to those candidates.
Yeah. And it's funny because if you listen to a lot, they are kind of the good old boy GOP people from the past, and you kind of intersect them with people like George H.W. Bush. Wait, did he did it drop on me? Oh no, that's not good. Yep, we're definitely live. So yeah, we'll try to get Kobi back in a second. But yeah, when you look at exactly the people who the Republican Party had on their, upper echelons back then, you saw that they sounded a lot like Democrats today. So unfortunately, when you take a look at that, yeah, I know. By the way, guys, I can see all the comments, and it's good to see you. And yeah, I don't know, maybe the CIA. I have no idea, but we're gonna try to get him back in a second. This is the thing about being live. Shit happens. Um, Hang on, just let me try to see if I can get him back. Let's see. And if anything, we can go a different route. It's not so bad. Worse things have happened before. We've had Jim Crow, so we shall overcome. Okay. Hopefully he got that message, and we will continue with him in a minute. By the way, I just wanted to say hello to everybody that's joined in the chat. It's good to see one and all of you. First, this was a good question. Did anyone see the new documentary about Julian, the younger crowd, and those who were high back then want to serve as he was to us? I have not seen it, but that does sound interesting, and I think that we should give it a look about Julian Assange. Oh, here we go.
I'm on my cell phone now because my laptop is clearly not working.
It is perfectly fine. It is okay. This type of stuff happens. We're not going to worry about it.
So where were we? Where were we in the conversation when it cut out?
We were talking about how the CIA just dropped your stream.
It's so funny. I had the same thought when it happened.
I was like, they're after us. It's all good though. Okay.
No, but speaking of the CIA, it does connect to this topic very well. Not just because Julian Assange published documents through WikiLeaks about the CIA, but when Julian Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy in the UK, the CIA had hired a Spanish surveillance firm to spy on Julian by bugging his bathroom and bugging his room, including with his conversations with his private lawyer. So the CIA went that far to incriminate him.
That makes diarrhea awkward. Sorry.
I was so confused. I was so confused at first. I was like, what?
I know. Because they're listening in and it's like, oh God, you guys have to bug his bathroom? Like, what in the hell is wrong with you?
Can you imagine that though? Like you're just like on the toilet and then all of a sudden you like realize there's like a microphone next to you or something. Like I can't imagine how they figured that out.
Yeah. You know what I probably would have done? I would have started singing off key every single time I took a shower just to annoy the shit out of them.
Just to troll them.
Yeah. It's like, I hear y'all. Y'all
no, it's funny because
incriminate me. I'd probably do something like that. Ow! I had my surgery and my arm's still hurting.
No, it's so funny because I'll be driving in my car and sometimes I'll be talking to myself and I'll be like, "Oh, hey, FBI agent! Like, I hope you're enjoying this conversation."
Yeah, it's like every single time I take all my clothes off, I'm like, "I hope you're enjoying the show. Please subscribe to my Patreon." But it's just weird because the thing is they're mad at him because we basically now know how corrupt our government is, and we've always had suspicions. Like we Americans have always thought there's something shady up with the government, and we all, like for instance, anybody, especially who's in the chat. By the way, wave and like and subscribe. But anybody, especially of us who was raised in poor neighborhoods, especially in the hood, when you were a little kid playing outside and you looked up at the sky and you saw these entrails coming out of the plane, you're like, why in the hell are they doing it? What are they doing? We've have been having suspicions of the government for decades. And
Oh
so
no,
for
definitely.
yeah, so for somebody like uh gosh, I was gonna say Elon Musk, sorry. But for
Julian.
somebody like Julian Assange to be a part of that reveal, it's just like, wait a minute, were we correct the whole time?
No, it's so interesting because like when I was a kid, we used to have those narratives about like the Illuminati, this
Oh yeah,
secret group of rich people that rules everything behind the scenes, and
the Bilderberg.
everybody knows about them, but nobody knows exactly who they are and what they do. And it's
Yeah,
just so interesting how that segues into eventually learning, oh, like the billionaire class in the US funds wars because the
hmm,
wars are profitable to them. And so they're
exactly.
just starting all this drama with all these other countries for little
Hmm.
other reasons than money and resources. Like that's the main motivator, even if we say it's about democracy and human rights. And I think Julian Assange showed that because in
Hmm.
some of those WikiLeaks emails, you got to see some of the, I don't know, like people giving money to the Clinton Foundation and then the Clinton Foundation doing diplomatic favors for them in return,
Yeah,
or explicit discussions about going into Syria for their oil.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
explicit about it in these emails. It's not like when they're out in public, they like to kind of have a veil of like, oh, we don't do that. But in the
Hmm.
emails, they admit it because they knew
Yeah,
nobody, they didn't think anybody was watching. They didn't think anybody could see what they were saying and say, tell the
yeah,
truth.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And one of the things that uh it was kind of like a mask off moment for people like Elon Musk when I forgot who it was. I wish I remember because I can credit them, but they basically were talking about Venezuela. I'm sorry, but Bolivia.
Mm.
And
Oh, I
yeah,
think I
and
know what
then yeah, and then Elon Musk said, "Oh, we'll coup whoever we want," and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah,
Like, are
he
you?
was so blatant about it. It's like we always suspected that Tesla wanted the coup in Bolivia because we wanted their lithium for their electric vehicles and whatnot.
Yeah,
But for Elon Musk to just explicitly say it in that type of like bombastic way is like, what? You think that's
yeah,
okay? Just
yeah,
admit it.
yeah. It's crazy. It's like, oh, so I see who you're in league with.
Mm.
Um, but
It's so crazy because like when it comes to things like Bolivia, the coup in Bolivia, we helped overthrow with the OAS. We helped get rid of Evo Morales.
yes,
And then it turned out that the analysis that they were using to get rid of Morales was not true. It was that, well, because the last votes that came in pushed Morales from being down to being ahead, it must have been voter fraud. There was no way those last votes could have done that. And then in
oh,
reality, it was just because he had more support in the countryside, and those were the votes counted last.
okay, okay, okay. So what does this sound like?
I mean, it
Okay,
sounds kind of like what happens here too, right?
let's track back a few months, shall we?
What, the
When
2020 election?
a blonde-headed bushwhacker by the name of Donald J. Trump said, "Oh, well, the the elections were fraud because we were ahead in the polls right on election night, and then it was a fraud because afterwards, then we lost the election because of mail-in voting."
And that's going to become more common. People need to be like aware of that narrative because that's the narrative that I think you're going to see authoritarian minded people use around the world. I
Yeah.
mean, Bolsonaro is even starting to push the narrative in Brazil
Hmm.
that if he loses the election fraudulently, he won't accept the election results if it's fraudulent. But the polls show that Bolsonaro is down by like 30-40% now. Like it's almost guaranteed he's looking like he's going to lose. So all he needs to do is sow doubt about the election and
Hmm.
claim election fraud. He doesn't even need evidence. And if that claim can get enough support, even if it's just 20 or 30% of the public, if he gets the military on his side, like that can be a very serious problem.
Yes, definitely.
And that's why people need to take these like claims of election fraud seriously,
Hmm.
because it's like, even if there's no truth to it, it can still have monumental consequences. And,
Yeah.
I don't think the OAS should just go around, you know, easily supporting coups in countries like they do in places like Bolivia and Venezuela.
but unfortunately, it's within their economic interests, and that's what they're going to do because they want that to happen. You know,
because at the end of the day, it's more about the money. Like in Venezuela, they have one of the largest oil reserves in the entire world, and Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him wanted to use that oil money for social programs, for healthcare, for education, for housing, things like that. Whereas Guaido has explicitly said that he wanted to open it up to foreign markets, privatize it, let other companies profit off of this oil. And so that is what's below the surface of all of this. Oh, Maduro's a dictator. I mean, there's a lot bubbling under the surface of that claim.
Yeah. And it's like, it's I forgot exactly how I was going to put it, but you have people wanting to claim, Maduro as this dictator, and yet he's trying to do it for social programs. It's like, wait a minute, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And then the irony, to tie it back in to WikiLeaks, the way that it really connects to me is when you think about those DNC leaks that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, with John
they showed evidence of us interfering in our primary election. So you could make the argument that we had, a fraudulent election. So what? Does that mean that the 2016 primary didn't count and that, Hillary Clinton shouldn't have been the nominee? They should have had fresh elections or whatever. That's the implication of what we're saying.
I would say yes, we should.
Yeah,
we should.
Exactly. But that's the irony, is that we think that in Venezuela, when it's election fraud, they should know better. They shouldn't do that. And then when it's us, oh no, don't read those Russian hacked emails. We didn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute. We found out that it was Donna Brazile, who was head of the DNC, that was leaking questions to Hillary Clinton. I think it was through MSNBC, and MSNBC became CNN was part of the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. And so it's like, wait a minute, hold on. That means you literally have the Democratic Party actually, they're playing basically with the election, and they're rigging it so that the news media is actually more on their side. When isn't the news media supposed to be like an arbiter of just like calling balls and strikes? Like what the
But
hell?
the irony is that those news media that spin the narratives in the pro-state ways, when they're sued in court about it, like Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson, what do they argue in court? They argue, oh, well, we're not journalists, we're entertainers, and no reasonable person would take our words as truth, But that's not true. I think most Americans, when they turn on these networks, they do take what's being said seriously and as truth. And I think that, opinion, I think the truth has a bias. That, journalists, it's okay to have a bias because the truth has bias.
Yes.
And so it's so crazy to me because people would say in 2016, oh, well, it's not like they switched votes or anything. So how dare you call it rigged? It's like, you don't have to switch votes to rig it. If they're telling you on the media every single day, beating a certain drumbeat narrative into your face, it makes a subtle difference on people's opinions. Like, for example, when at the beginning of the primary, I remember, and this is before we knew about these emails, this is just when the suspicion of them rigging it was happening. They would say, oh, Bernie's down by 650 delegates, even though only 1 or 2 states had voted. And it's like, oh, but they're counting super delegates being party leadership, elected officials, lobbyists, people delegates whose votes don't count until the convention at the very end. But if the media keeps telling you that Hillary's up by 600 delegates, it creates this perception of inevitability that she's going to win. So why vote for Bernie? It doesn't even matter anyway. And that's the point of it. That's how they rigged it.
Yeah. And then let's not forget the closing down of multiple polling sites for the Democratic primary, because a lot of people always talk about, oh, the Republicans, they rigged the elections in the general. But the Democrats rigged the elections in the primary, and people don't realize that. They're like, and then they want to call it bullshit, but it's not, because thing is, look at what Pete Buttigieg did.
Yeah, with the shadow app.
Yeah, with the shadow app. And then he claimed victory in, was it Iowa?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
claimed victory when he was losing in the vote count.
yeah. And Bernie, he literally had to go out there and say, we won by, I think it was 800, was it 800,000 or 8 million votes? I think it was 800,000 votes, something like that.
I'm not sure.
In the primary, but it was still a significant amount that he won over. But they wanted to count just these delegates, and it's like these pledged delegates. It's like that doesn't matter. It's the amount of people that actually voted. That's all that matters. So why are you so focused on these pledged delegates? And that's exactly what MSNBC and CNN were all about. And the only reason why Fox News was actually calling the accurate balls and strikes is because they didn't have any skin in the game. They didn't really even care. Because for them, it was just like, oh, all Democrats are commies. That's all they think. And so they didn't care. And so they just called it.
It's just an excuse to make. It's like, to them, it's just an excuse to make the Democrats look bad. And so even if they're being hypocritical, Fox News, in the way that they're doing it, it doesn't really matter because their brand is not really to be ideologically pure on these things. Yeah. Their brand is to show how the Democrats are being hypocritical on those things. Yeah. And it's so ironic because you're talking about the focus on the delegates with Pete Buttigieg. Mm-hmm. Don't the Democrats want to get rid of the electoral college, the type of thing that makes it so that, delegates matter more than the popular vote? Isn't that their whole narrative? But during the Pete Buttigieg primary, it didn't count. It didn't matter. Lately, they've been talking about HR1 and trying to make our country more democratic, stop voter suppression. The Republicans are all for voter suppression. Yeah. It's like, well, they sued the Green Party off the ballot in like 5 or 6 different states in 2020. HR1 sets the boundaries higher for fundraising and things like that. So it makes it harder for third parties to organize. And when third parties express these concerns to them, Democrats, it falls on deaf ears. They just pretend it's not real or it's not happening. And it's like, so how are you going to want us to trust you as being pro-democracy, as being standing up for voting rights, when you don't even respond to us calling out your hypocrisy? I mean, the Russiagate thing to cover up the 2016 primary, they never accepted accountability for what they did in 2016. Tom Perez and Elizabeth Warren both had said, we have to be honest, guys. This primary was rigged. And then what happens 2 days later? Oh, well, rigged was a strong word to use. I just think it was a little unfair. They don't admit it. They won't admit the truth, and they won't change. And that's why it's so frustrating to those of us who don't want to go along with this lesser of two evils, vote blue no matter who strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And while we're still on the subject of Julian Assange, there was some news that, okay, so first off, I want to cover this. Mr. John Cusack. A lot of you who are on the left, especially in the left Twitter sphere, you pretty much know who John Cusack is and what he said, but I want to bring this to the attention to other people who hasn't seen it. So this is him responding to Katie Halper, friend to the show. Okay, so
let's see. I didn't see what Katie said. What did Katie say about this?
Okay, let me hang on. Let me make this bigger.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Okay, so Katie Halper basically said, everyone who wants to lock Julian up is siding with Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo. Okay, and which is correct. And
yeah, I mean, Mike Pompeo called WikiLeaks a hostile non-state actor.
Yes. John Cusack responded with, and it sounds like Donald Trump. Like if I read it in Donald Trump's voice, it would sound like Donald Trump. Said, truth is Julian Assange sided with Trump, and all reality is position. Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop. That was horrible.
Okay, I can't stop laughing when you read it like that.
In all reality, his position was better for Trump to win and expose the rot, a kind of scorched earth revolutionary politics. He had nothing to lose and possibly gain his freedom, but it was weak immoral bet and a massive suffering ensued. Please tell me why John Cusack is wrong.
So let's see. I mean, in that quote there, he's wrong because Julian Assange had never stated that he was a Trump supporter, that he wants Trump to win, that he thinks Trump is going to be more likely to free him. He never said any of those phrases. What he's basing that off of is that I think there was DMs exchanged between WikiLeaks and Trump Jr. at one point, basically where they were just trying to get information out of them, and they were slightly friendly, you know, so they took it that way. But Julian Assange had been saying repeatedly, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is like choosing between cholera and gonorrhea. You know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah.
So he was not saying that Trump was better. His whole point was that, well, look, we have all this evidence of Hillary Clinton going to war for oil, you know, wanting to overthrow foreign governments, you know, wanting to betray democracy here in this country. And so his whole point was that, you know, the kindest thing I think he implied was that Hillary Clinton's been in politics for decades and Donald Trump is an X factor that nobody knows, or he's just brand new. People don't know what he's going to do. But he never was on the side of Donald Trump during the election.
Yeah. So with that, you know, this anti-Assange type of rhetoric kind of goes in line with what a lot of the national security state have been saying and thinking about him. And no matter which side you're on, they both equally hate Julian Assange because they think that he has done something wrong. And they're pushing this narrative, even though it is not true. And we can honestly and accurately say that it's not true because there was a report that just came out about basically, I would go so far as to say exonerating him.
Oh, we're talking about the Siggy news? The Iceland one?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically about how one of the key witnesses in the case was some psychopath that's been convicted of, you know, pedophilia or something in the past. He claimed that Julian Assange was trying to hack into the Icelandic government or a bank or something like that. And now he's admitted that it was all a lie. He was just saying it because the U.S., I don't know if it was the FBI or the CIA, somebody in the U.S. offered him immunity to, you know, speak up against Assange. And so he even admitted he started doing more illegal things once he was given this immunity. But
of course.
Yeah, but the fact that that happened, you're right, it should exonerate Julian because that's one of the key witnesses in the case to make it look like Julian's a hacker or something when that was not true at all.
Yeah. In fact, I'll read the first couple paragraphs. It says, a couple weeks back, the U.S. government's attempt to prosecute Julian Assange for publishing classified material was dealt a major blow. You probably didn't even hear about it. Hell no, we didn't. 2 weeks ago, the Icelandic newspaper Stundin published a bombshell report revealing that Sigurdur Thordsson, sorry, I mispronounced that name.
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Whatever. A former WikiLeaks volunteer from Iceland, whose testimony was key to the United States case against Assange, admitted to fabricating accusations against Assange. Those accusations have been featured in the U.S. indictment against the organization's founder, and they were cited by the British judge who narrowly ruled against Assange's extradition in the start of this year. Now, here's the key point. It says the crux of the situation is this. The indictment charges, among other things, that Assange instructed Thordsson to commit computer intrusions and secretly record high-ranking Icelandic officials, including members of parliament, that they tried to decrypt a stolen file from Icelandic bank, that Assange tried to use the unauthorized access given to him by a source to make use of a government website that tracked police vehicles, and that he had ordered and encouraged Thordsson to set up a relationship with the hacking group who would hack and illegally obtain documents to pass on to WikiLeaks. All of these claims, Thornton has now admitted to Stundin, are either highly misleading or outright false, the paper reports. So basically, they ended up getting some idiot volunteer who does some nasty shit on the side, and they try to use it to basically punish Julian Assange. So, they wanted to make it so that he can, be the Fallout guy. So it's like, wow.
I mean, they're looking for every excuse, every reason they possibly can, because they know there's no there, because they know that he really is a journalist doing the work. Yeah. They need to grasp at straws and find things like that to make him look bad. And so to connect it back to that John Cusack tweet, it's so frustrating what people like John are doing, because all of these charges against Julian have to do with the Iraq war logs, in 2009 or 2010. So it doesn't matter, your opinion on 2016 and the DNC leaks and things like that. It doesn't matter the Thornton case anymore. People bring up one of the things people commonly bring up is that Julian was accused of rape in Sweden. And they were going to try to extradite him to Sweden, and he was being open with the case. He was responding to the concerns. He was just scared that if he got extradited to Sweden, they would then send him to the United States. Now, all the charges got dropped. That's not a case anymore, but people still bring it up as reasons why they don't like Julian or they don't trust Julian. And it's just so frustrating because, it doesn't matter if you like him as a person. It doesn't matter if you agree with his work or any of his opinions or anything. The whole point is that if he gets sent to the United States and prosecuted for publishing classified information, then what's to stop the U.S. government from doing that to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, to anybody else, to any small journalist? Because it sets the precedent that any international journalist anywhere in the world, if you do what we consider espionage, what we consider, not acceptable journalism, you will be made an example out of.
They do not want us getting any ideas. And so just like they'll make an example out of Cuba, Vietnam, they'll make an example out of North Korea, they'll make an example out of any nation that gives us ideas that we can be more free than what we are. Then it's like, you know what? Now we got to stamp that. We got to nip it in the bud. They're basically if anybody who's watched old Andy Griffin shows, Barney Fife, he's always telling Andy he has to nip it in the bud. So basically the United States is Barney Fife, and they're basically trying to nip it in the bud. But here's the crazy part. We're a lot smarter than they think. And the thing is, we also like to do a lot of research, and we talk. And seeing what is going on with Julian Assange, our generation, we're looking at it going, yo, wait. The truth needs to be out there no matter what. We're not going to sit here and just allow this guy to be persecuted. And then what if he gets back to the United States and he's indicted and charged and sentenced to 175 years, which is what they're trying to do. And now this is going to, freak out a lot of other journalists, and these journalists who are trying to uncover the truth. Now they're going to be intimidated by our country from telling the truth.
Oh, and I totally have like a personal story that kind of connects to that a little bit. So when I was going to college, I studied journalism and political science. I was a double major.
Cool.
And the WikiLeaks emails during 2016, they were like, to me, a journalistic like revelation. They were like the biggest story in journalism in 2016 for me. I was all on top of it. I'd be trending every day on Twitter. Every time they'd release a new batch of emails every morning, I would be there trying to find like the most newsworthy emails in them. And what scared me at the time was, seeing how they took something as small as Julian exchanging a DM with somebody, or, so I had asked this Guccifer 2.0 account, who the U.S. accuses of being the Russian government without evidence. I had asked them, oh, do you have evidence of information on the Clinton Foundation or something? Like, because you said you did. I want to see the evidence that you have this. And they responded to me. And then over time, I got a DM from a BBC journalist who was like, hey, I saw you tweeting with that Guccifer 2.0 account. and I'm writing an article about unwitting agents of the government of Russia, and I think that you're one of them. And so, I want you to explain yourself or whatever. And 19-year-old me, seeing how they're trying to send Julian Assange to prison, seeing how they're treating people who are even just tangentially connected to this thing, I'm over here like, oh shit, did I accidentally do something wrong here? Like, am I involved in something that's more serious than I realize? And so I basically like deleted my Twitter account at the time, shut the fuck up. Like, I realized I was involved in like this international diplomacy, like really serious thing. And I was 19 and didn't know what I was doing. And then after the election, I still cared about these issues. I still followed them, but I wasn't as heavily involved in the activism side of it. And so then when Russiagate falls apart, and the Mueller report finds that there's no evidence, we have circumstantial evidence that Russia did it, but no clear evidence that Russia did it.
Yeah.
And they never proved any of the emails untrue or anything. So then over time, I realized, oh crap, like I should have stayed on this thing the whole time because I was right in the first place in 2016. And thank God for people like Aaron Mate who were out there continuing to do that work. But, and this is just how I reacted to the witch hunt that kind of began, that was just kind of out there. Imagine if they actually get Julian and send him to prison for longer than they send rapists and murderers to prison.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's like and it's crazy to me that at the same time that we have that happening, the US shuts down 33 international news sites or international media sites, including like Press TV and others.
Yeah.
And so it's like, they're not just going for Julian. It is a very clear concerted effort to like go after adversarial journalism in general, not just WikiLeaks.
Yeah, it's like they're out for blood, and it's like, what in the hell? And it's like, for instance, we've been getting here on Fred Hampton Leftists, we've been having people tell us, oh yeah, they're throttling your coverage, they're throttling your channel. And there are a lot of people who say, oh, we don't even get the notifications like we're supposed to whenever you guys go live anymore. And now we're going, oh snap. So we're definitely on their radar. And it's crazy because, you have people who, you have people who look at us and they don't see anything wrong with us, and all we really want is to give people healthcare. So it's
like, why are they targeting you guys if you're not doing anything? You're not saying, oh, let's go overthrow the government tomorrow. You're not saying like, oh, chaos. Like, no, you like want everybody to have their needs met, like have good education, go against wars, peace, prosperity, everybody doing well. And like, they go after us for things like that. And big tech, like, it's totally not a conspiracy theory that they throttle people and target people like that on purpose. Because I remember very specifically in 2016, the DNC leaks or something would be trending, the top of the trending list on Twitter. And then magically it would just disappear off the trending list, even though it was still being tweeted about like, thousands of times every second. Everybody's still clearly talking about it, but they take it off the front page and they downplay it. And it's just like, and now it's gotten even more explicit since then, where they'll just, now they've just been banning people off of Twitter left and right. If you tweet something with a cuss word in it or something, it'll tell you, oh, are you sure you want to say this?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm worried because in 2016, I'm not saying it was immaculate. They weren't censoring anything, but the degree of censorship they were doing in 2016 compared to the degree of censorship they do now, it's clearly increased.
Yes.
They're clearly becoming more bold. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we see this happening at the same time that everybody's got an Amazon Alexa in their kitchen. And, we have surveillance devices in our pocket that follow us around all day. I mean, 1984 is really happening. I don't think people realize, like, it's not just like that's kind of what technology is doing. And what big tech's continuing to do by censor people online who say things that they don't like.
Anything. Yeah.
I think you were frozen for a second.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how you were talking about that and that happened right then and there.
Again.
Yeah, because that paused for a second. I'm like, what's going on here? this actually goes into, we basically are covering like all the different topics that I wanted to cover all at the same time.
Oh yeah, so that's kind of like my conversation style. I'm very much connecting different topics in the same conversation. I like that.
Yeah. And I'm the same way too. It's just there's some people who will grab me by my shirt collar and say, "Stay on topic," and I'm just like, okay.
I'm sorry, it's my I have attention issues. I'm sorry.
yeah, me too. But yeah, one of the things that actually I wanted to cover as well was you wanted to talk about things like foreign policy. We did kind of touch on that a little bit, especially talking about North Korea. One of the things that I also wanted to give attention to, there's a comrade. He has a channel called Second Thought, and
don't know him, but go on.
Oh, you're gonna want to know him. He has a YouTube channel, and it's very educational. His videos are typically between 10 and 12 minutes long. Very easy to digest, very quick, and it gives you various great subjects. And he, like, one of his videos was titled "You Might Be a Socialist," and he basically is anti-capitalist, just like we are, and great production value. But one of the things he was talking about was how the systems of capitalism prevent people from being able to what's the best way to put it? It prevents people from being able to live a decent life. And the crux of the argument was, there was one part where he was saying about how the Cuban government sent their doctors overseas to help with the COVID pandemic. And they did it without charge. They did it for free, because that's what humanity is supposed to do. We're supposed to help each other. Somehow that's a weird concept to some people, but it's wild. And so even though they are under, an embargo and sanctions and all these different things, they're able to do this. And they also came up with an even better vaccine for COVID than we ever could.
And it's so crazy because, like, they do all of those nice things, like you said, without a profit motive or anything. And then to juxtapose that to what the U.S. did with things like vaccines, we kept our patent rights for our corporations that made these vaccines so that they could continue profiting off of it, instead of waiving the patents so that countries around the world can have access to the formula for the vaccine, so they can all produce the vaccine themselves locally, which would make the vaccine get spread way quicker to everybody in the world. No, we didn't do that. We wanted to allow intellectual property rights and profit for those corporations. And now you see global apartheid when it comes to what countries are vaccinated and what countries aren't. Cuba's got a lung cancer vaccine that Americans can't get. Our government won't let them get it, or it's difficult to get, I think.
Yeah, because they don't want anyone to look at Cuba in a favorable way. The same thing with Vietnam. Like, he also brought out in Vietnam how they have one of the best COVID responses in the world in Vietnam. And you look at, how Vietnam operates, and it's like, man, if we could have operated just like they did, our COVID response probably would have lasted 3-4 months at the most. And we would have been partying just like Australia did when they were having festivals in the middle, while we were trying to lock down during the pandemic. So
it's like the whole COVID thing in general was one of the things that helped open my eyes to, our propaganda about China and how China's not necessarily how we portray them. Because, they are a country of 1.4 billion or whatever. And their COVID cases were significantly lower than ours. And I'm not saying, the narrative, usually the counter argument that gets given when you say that is, oh, well, you really believe the Chinese government? You don't think they're fudging their numbers? Okay, I'm sure they fudge it a little bit, like any government does.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible for them to fudge it to the degree of the US has the most cases in the world and China's like number 50 or 100 on the list. I don't think they fudge it that well. It's because they valued public health and we valued reopening, back to normal, allowing these corporations to get back to profiting again. I think that was the key difference. And when I learned that, that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, maybe they, like, it's not to say that they are perfectly socialist or anything like that, but maybe they're actually aiming for socialism and things like that more than the United States is. And I don't think anybody's entertaining that conversation in the mainstream.
Yeah, no, because the thing is, the United States has been trying to tamp down socialism for decades, and basically any and almost all of our military interventions have been either to do one of two things or both, either to tamp down any type of leftist government or to try to extract resources from said governments, or both. So the thing is that China's like, fuck that, we I just demonetized myself. But they're like, the hell with that. They're like, the hell with we have super chats, by the way. We're demonetized. But they're not the ones who are going to other nations and trying to extract their resources and do all the same things that the United States is doing. Like, for instance, I do not see China and Iraq. I don't see the Chinese trying to take over Bolivia or Venezuela. I don't.
And it's so interesting you make that connection, because so many conservatives, the thing that they're fear-mongering about right now is the idea that, oh, well, China is about to surpass the United States within the next decade as the global hegemon. And their fear is, well, look, through the Belt and Road Initiative, China is doing all of these infrastructure projects in Africa and all of these other developing countries. So what they're doing is imperialism. They're just trying to spread their influence, and the United States can't let this happen. It's like what those people don't realize is, like you said, the US version of imperialism is, we don't just want our influence in those countries, we will violently make our influence known in those countries. We will overthrow their government. We will, make it so. Whereas China is doing it in a kind, like, give them investments, give them loans with very low interest rates, or even forgive the loans sometimes. They're doing it the more diplomatic, the right way you're supposed to make allies with other countries. And so it's like these conservatives don't even realize the hypocrisy in them complaining about China's imperialism, when the US imperialism, we're the global hegemon. We're the ones who are violently doing these things.
Let me ask you this. Isn't it funny how you have, especially conservatives in the United States, they will fearmonger about China doing the exact same thing that the United States has been doing for probably 100 years?
I'll connect that. That connects to the other topic that we haven't talked about yet that we were going to talk about. The whole defund the police.
Let's get on that.
Because that, to me, seems to be the big thing. That seems to be the big thing that Americans complain about with China, is they say, oh, well, look, they are a surveillance state. They are a police state. Look at all the protests in Hong Kong and places like that. And it's like, even if there is some truth to that statement, that they do have police, they do have surveillance, that those are real things. But they don't sense a hint of irony that the United States has 25% of the world's prison population, not China. Even though the US has like significantly less people than China, we have multiple times more prisoners.
There's like 4 or 5 Chinese people for every American.
Yes, and we have more prisoners, not them.
We have more prisoners.
Our police state has more prisoners. And so that, to me, when combining that, their COVID response being better than ours, and our complaint about their police state not even holding water because our police state is arguably worse. And the Julian Assange thing shows the surveillance state in the United States and how the surveillance state in the United States is global. Edward Snowden showed how we're spying on European leaders. We're spying on European citizens too. And so all of our complaints about China apply to us even more.
Yeah.
so in that context, I think a lot of Americans, if they understood this, it's not to say that the Chinese government's perfect. It's just to say that they're not necessarily the boogeyman that we say they are, and that Chinese people probably think that we're the boogeyman that we say they are. They think that about us.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I look at what the Chinese is doing. I talked to a friend who is, he's the communist, and he was telling me about some of the technology that China is getting into, especially in regards to their infrastructure. And I'm just like, wait a minute, hold up. If they're able to do that, they are kicking our behinds here in the United States. And I'm sitting here wondering, like, why in the hell are we not doing these things? Oh, well, because profit motive, and
And I think it's the understanding that if we do these things, go ahead. Oop, you there? Oop.
Did you refresh?
I think you froze for a second.
Okay. I did, yeah.
But go on, continue.
No. I was just expressing my frustration because every single time we want good things for ourselves, it's like, no, you can't have it. And I'm going to get into kind of a deeper thing here. And, please don't mind me.
No, I don't mind.
But you have this whole air of arrogance and thinking more of yourself than is necessary to think. And this is one of the driving forces behind capitalism, is that you think that you're better, so therefore you deserve more, even though it is the basic necessities of life. So how in the world do you deserve more cleaner air, cleaner water, better food, housing, just by simply because you physically do something more than someone else, when you're not taking into account that some people may not be able to do as much as you? And isn't it a human right that people have these things? And if it's a human right, then why should they have to push themselves uncomfortably to do things that some people can do comfortably, for just to be able to live? I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly.
No, it makes sense. It reminds me of the quote.
The way my brain works.
No, it reminds me of the quote. What is it? From each according to his ability, to each according to their need. You know what I mean? That each person should be given what they need to live, and in exchange they give what they can possibly give to society. Like you're saying with capitalism, it's so frustrating because we don't have that basic floor of everybody has healthcare, everybody has housing, everybody has food, your basic necessities of life. And I always think about this in terms of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in the sense that, people can't achieve higher than, they can't reach their potential if they're constantly thinking about, I need to make money for food, I need to make money for my housing. If you're in survival mode 24/7, you're not able to give your best to society and to help in the way that you should. Like, I think that we need to get to the point where society, where the poorest of the poor people, have every single basic need met. That if you want to, you don't need to work, because there is enough provided that work is kind of what you do because you want to do that work, not because you're being coerced through survival to do that work. And I think robots are going to make that easier. Technology is going to make that easier. Yeah. Because automation, for now, the problem with automation is that, well, we're going to automate away all the jobs, then we're going to leave everybody poor and not fill their needs. That's why automation's so scary to people. But if we had society structured where all of your basic needs are met, it would be amazing that we could have robots do the jobs that people hate doing. You know what I mean? But we have to move to the point where everybody's needs are met before we do that. Otherwise, we're going to have a giant class of people who don't have jobs or any way of meeting their needs.
Yeah, I mean, I hate mowing my lawn. Like, come on. let's get this drone technology going, because I don't want to cut my grass anymore. It rained so much, and now my grass has grown so much. I don't like it.
And imagine like a Chipotle worker. Think about like a Chipotle worker and how they have to stand there for like 5 hours straight, just constantly putting food in the thing in the same repetitive like
rolling burrito
assembly line. Whereas if a robot could easily do those things, those are things that we don't necessarily need to force people to make $8 an hour to do, or however low it is. Yeah. It always blows my mind that me, as a DoorDash driver, all I do is just drive to restaurants, pick up people's food, and drop it off at their door. That I make more money doing this than a Chipotle worker does, and they're busting their ass all day long.
For real?
Because I typically make, on average, about $15 an hour or so doing door dashing and stuff. Whereas people at the Chipotle in my area, they don't make that much. But they're working so much harder than I am, and I know that. Like, I feel so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, it reminds me of the idea of what billionaires think that they're the hardest working people in society. And it's like, no, I think that it's pretty clear that the low wage, hard working people, they're the ones who are working the hardest in society, and they're getting the least benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Not the billionaires who maybe do a few hours of work a day, maybe 1 or 2 hours of just, managerial work. And then they do relax on a beach, drinking beer, or whatever they do, drinking champagne. It's just crazy to me. And it's like people are so scared of the words communism and socialism that they don't think that they can advocate for everybody to have all of their basic needs met, because to do that, you're smeared as one of those bad labels that nobody wants to be. And it's just so frustrating. Like, I wish we could move past, like, labels matter, I think, in terms of like understanding things academically. Labels matter.
Yeah.
But I wish that we wouldn't put such a stigma on labels that we aren't able to, actually dig into them and analyze what they mean.
Yeah. Or even like, for instance, here in the Black community, if you mention socialism to an older Black person, they're going to react just like any other older person, because they've been red scared like crazy. But then once you start to explain issue for issue the points about why some of these leftist policies would work so well, then it starts to make sense. Because I did it when I was at dialysis one morning. One of the older gentlemen that was there, he is a Trump supporter, older Black gentleman, Trump supporter. And him and I guess another older Black man who I guess he was more of a Democrat. And they were arguing over, no, you tell me what socialism is. No, you talk about socialism. You tell me. And they, neither one of them would give the definition of socialism. So here I am, the youngest person. There's two like 70-year-old men, and I'm in my 30s, and I go, socialism is the workers owning the means of production and distribution. And it is a system where we have more of, I think I said something to the effect of, we have more of a welfare system that takes care of the people, and social welfare. So I said something like that.
Yeah. And
they were like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. And then I started to explain things. And as I was explaining everything, all the older Black people were like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
There was no fight.
I'll say that connects perfectly to the dialogue I think we've all been having on left Twitter recently. The whole idea of, talking to people who don't think like us politically and trying to not consider them allies, not consider them 100% on our side, or however people want to frame it, but just talking to people who don't agree with you, and trying to have that dialogue to find the common ground. Because like you said, I think a lot of the times when we explain it to people in not inflammatory, the labels that they're scared of or whatever it is, when you actually get into the details of explaining these things, most people, even I've interacted with Trump supporters who don't hate me as an anarcho-communist. They at least respect what I'm saying about corruption and poverty and things like that. So, they see me as one of the good ones, right? Or how they think of it. And it's like, but that's how you can latch on to people. If you can find the common ground on things like, I think Julian Assange case connects that really well, or anti-war stuff, or even recently we've been learning that there are some conservatives who agree with us on defund the police. And, you know, I think one of the Bundy people from that Oregon wildlife refuge, you know, he's out there on a lot of issues, but he agreed with the idea of defund the police. And that doesn't mean you have to think he's a nice person. That doesn't mean you have to agree with him on anything else that he believes in. But if we want to defund the police, we have to, like, you know, take advantage of these people who agree with us on things like that and, you know, channel that energy.
Yes. Now, here's something I want to do. So I want us to go into our most positive mind. Anybody who's in the chat, just close your eyes just for 1 second. I want you to squeeze real tight, close your eyes. And as you have your eyes closed, I want you to picture going to the hood and not being afraid. What do I mean by that? Why is the hood so scary to many people? Because they think they're going to get robbed, they're going to get shot, they're going to get raped, what have you. A lot of the things that happen in the hood, and when I say the hood, I'm not just talking about black hoods. I'm talking about the Latinos. I'm talking about the white hoods. I'm talking about everywhere. People are in these situations because they do not have the resources to take care of themselves. So they have to resort to things that they don't necessarily want to do, but they feel like that's the only way they have to survive. Because of the way people are treated. And this is one of the reasons why, like, for instance, I live in Val Demings District, okay, District 10 in Florida. There are police out here on a daily basis, right? And because of that, there are always police that are harassing people. People are being harassed just for being poor. Like, for instance, how many people are out here living out on the street and they're just trying to get some rest, but then the police gets called on them.
Okay, that's the type of thing that's like, that's why, you know, I, for years, let's go back to like 2015 when I had first heard of Black Lives Matter, you know, the movement. I was always on the side of Black Lives Matter. I always believed in criminal justice reform, you know, better conditions for prisoners, you know, less violent force, things like that. I always believed those things. But it wasn't until last summer that I finally kind of made that turning point from reform the police to defund towards abolish. Because, you know, I had been going to a lot of the protests in Washington, D.C. And I started to see the ways that people would just be protesting, marching down the street, not vandalizing anything, not spray painting, not doing anything wrong. And police just start pepper spraying, throwing tear gas, throwing flashbangs at people. And all they're doing is just peacefully protesting. And then things devolve into what they would consider a riot after we've been violently attacked by the police. And so it was seeing that, and then seeing Mayor Bowser in D.C. paint the street with Black Lives Matter while giving more money to the police. She endorsed Mike Bloomberg for president in 2020. Stop and frisk Mike Bloomberg.
Speak on it.
And so I'd be seeing things like that, and then I started to realize, like you're saying, it's not, police don't solve crime whatsoever. They react to crime, and they don't even react to like more than a fraction of the crime. The way that you solve crime is by solving poverty, by solving the root causes of crime. And so if we were taking money out of police, I mean, if U.S. police were a military, it would be the third biggest military in the world, behind the U.S. and China. That's U.S. police. And so it's like, if we were not spending all this money on violent police and instead spending it on ending poverty and giving people houses, giving people health care, as you start defunding the police and reallocating the resources, you'll start to see the results of it. You'll start to see the crime rate dropping over time. And that's how you keep working towards abolition. Defund the police is the compromise, because defund the police is how you start to see the effects of the redistribution of the resources. Then once people see that, they'll be more open to eventually abolishing the police, because we'll see, wow, once we start giving all these economic opportunities to everybody, that solves the crime. They're not desperate to rob people and do things like that anymore. There's no need.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I'm at the point right now where I look at I'm looking at the facts and figures of it. And when you bring up these facts and figures, it depends on who you bring it up to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of black people, especially from the areas that I'm from, they'd be like, oh, yeah, they don't do nothing. How many times something happened to you, like something gets stolen, and like it could be your car. Here, write our report, and if we see something, maybe we'll see something, and that's it. It's like, how many times has this been in a sitcom where people get something stolen and the police just don't do nothing?
So common.
How many people in the hood, when they call the police for something that is legitimate emergency, and the police take their sweet little time just to get there? A lot of
I was
times,
like, what? I think the police only solve, what is it, the percentage? Like 5% of 5% of rape cases, or
2% of crime. They only solve 2% of crimes. 98% of the cases that police are called for, they do not solve.
No, and it's so interesting what you were saying. It's so interesting what you were saying before about how, people in the hood understand that police are not solving crime, that they're just reacting to it. And the big problem, I think Nick, Socialist MMA, shared the poll earlier today that was like, 65% of black people agree with defunding the police and reallocating the resources, but only 30% of white people agree with defunding the police and reallocating the resources. And it's because the black community knows that when they call the police, it's not really going to help them solve their problem. Whereas white people seem to have this false sense of security that, they need the police there or else they're going to be victimized by these crimes. And it's like you were saying, they only solve 2% of the crimes. So no, when you call the police, it's not going to help you,
But here's
the white community doesn't understand this yet.
Yeah. Think about this. Okay. If somebody deals with a particular thing more often, that means they're more of an expert on the issue, correct or not?
What would you say? Say it again.
If somebody is more involved with a particular thing, that means they have more expertise with the issue, correct or not?
Yes.
Okay. So, like for instance, let's say you give me a car to drive, right? And I'm driving the car 5 days a week. I drive it. And then you're driving the car 2 days a week. And then you're like, oh man, this car drives awesome. But then I say, no, the car is not driving awesome. There's something wrong with the car. You're like, no, there's nothing wrong with the car. There's something wrong with the car. I know. I drive it more than you. No, there's nothing wrong with the car. There's something wrong with the car. And then next thing you know, we open up the hood and I'm like, see? And they're like, oh, that's defund the police.
That's literally what's happening. And I think the cameras
need them all the time in our hoods, and they do the same stuff. And look, every single time we tell people something, especially in middle America, then they're like, oh no, that police aren't like that. But then we share videos and it's like, oh, that's just a one-off. That doesn't happen all the time. You bet your ass it does happen all the time. And I want y'all to start listening to, you guys don't listen to us. And that, not you, that's not what I mean.
No, I know you, the proverbial you.
But what I mean is, we come up with this. And look, when George Floyd was murdered, there was a slew of people who finally got to see through the eyes of a black man.
It's interesting you say that because it connects to. I was watching an interview from 2016. It was Julian Assange, and he was talking about. He was asked, what do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement? And his response was, it connects perfectly to what we're saying here. For a long time, Black people and other people of color have been complaining about what police are doing, and white people never believed them. But as citizen journalism became more common, and the George Floyd killing, murder, it was filmed by a citizen, just a random person with their cell phone, and so that he just talked about how that shows that now that white people are finally seeing it on phones, they're finally believing Black people and journalists who in the past journalists have always, they're always on the side of the state, right? They're always on the side of the propaganda. But now you're starting to see slowly the turning point of even journalists can't deny what police are doing to people of color because we have the evidence of the cell phones. We can see it all with our own eyes now. And it sucks. It really sucks that it required white people seeing the evidence to believe people of color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We should have just believed you at your word this whole time because we literally enslaved people. We literally had segregation. What isn't there to believe there? But the citizen journalism was a turning point.
But here's the crazy part. We didn't want you to see it for the reasons that people think. We didn't want you to have to behold such a fright because nobody should have to behold something like that. And a lot of times people will go, well, what were you doing at the time? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's the propaganda talking. That's the propaganda that this makes me more dangerous. And unfortunately, you have a lot of people who still stick to that propaganda. And it's not necessarily their fault because their consent has been manufactured. But we're trying to wake you up. And then you have some people who go, well, if you guys weren't so violent in Chicago, and it's like, but why are they violent in Chicago?
Yeah.
Why? And then just like I had someone who was a friend who said, oh, well, we learned our violence from these Southern redneck whites. It's like, yeah, no. We learned a lot of it because we're trying to do what we can to survive, and our communities are exploited. Just like they exploit countries abroad, our communities are exploited as well. I live a couple of blocks away from one of the most expensive malls in Central Florida, the Millennium Mall. That was a $100 million project, something like that. Everybody in my area works over there. Down the street from the Millennium Mall is places like Windermere and Isleworth. You know who owned homes in Windermere and Isleworth? Shaq owned a home there. Tiger Woods owned a home there. So guess what? We're right down the street. So guess what? We're basically the slaves working in the back of the house. And then whenever you go over to that mall over there, where they have the Macy's, the Bloomingdale's, they have the Versace stores, they have the Jimmy Choo stores, right within feet of me. They have these places where they have the $2,000, Christian Louboutin shoes, and I can't afford them, even though I live right here.
See, that's so crazy. I can relate to that so much because I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland.
Wow.
And so I'm right here on the suburbs. Well, I'm in Frederick now, but I was right on the suburbs of Washington, D.C. You know, we have the most government employees in the country here. I'm sure we got all sorts of CIA billionaires, all sorts of stuff like that. But I grew up in like a lower middle class neighborhood. We had the electricity shut off when I was a little kid. Like I knew people who grew up in like really bad poverty. And we were only like a 20-minute. Oh, actually, we were like a 5-10 minute drive from the really nice neighborhood. I went from an old run-down elementary school to the new elementary school they built, and that new elementary school brought together, the poor neighborhoods and the rich neighborhoods into the same school.
Mhm.
And it was so obvious, just the difference in our mentalities. It's like there's huge differences between people who are lower class and people who are upper class.
Yeah.
And to have that right next to each other, as close as it is just shocking. And I don't know how those rich people don't feel bad, how they don't how it doesn't eat them alive on the inside, that they live in these billion-dollar mansions. I was a carpet cleaner in Montgomery County. I went into these mansions in Potomac to clean these billionaires' houses before. And it's shocking to me because they'll be so nice to you. They'll be so kind, and they'll seem like they don't realize they're doing anything wrong. And meanwhile, I'm here, making $12 an hour doing mold remediation without proper safety equipment and shit in your billionaires, millionaires' mansions and shit. And so it's just so crazy to me. And that's why I don't think people it's so frustrating when liberals don't get it, when liberals try to say things like, oh, we care about poor people. We care about people of color. We care about people in the countries we bomb. But then they're just so easy. It's so easy for them to brush off these things like, oh, yeah, I know the Democratic Party doesn't want to give everybody health care, but, it's so hard. We can't get support for that yet. We have to do the Cobra expansion, guys. And they don't realize that mindset's going to lead us to not having health care for the next 30 years. Do you want to have healthcare in our lifetime or not, guys? Because if we keep doing these incremental half measures constantly, you'll never solve the poor people's problems. You'll never solve systemic racism if you don't actually cut to the heart of these problems. But they're in these privileged neighborhoods. They don't understand the scale of the problem themselves because they're not living it.
Yeah. It's just and I also want to bring attention to, for instance, have anybody ever really took a look at what they go through in places like Appalachia? You know what I mean?
Opioid epidemic.
Yeah. And, when I talk about the hood, I'm not just talking about black neighborhoods. I'm talking about the white ones too. They're going through it. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, and we're all going to intersect all this together.
Okay.
There is a March for Medicare for All coming up on July 24th. I will be speaking at the Orlando March. So if you guys are in Central Florida and want to come to Orlando to meet me, great. I don't know if I'll be able to bring warm cookies and give you I can give you a hug, but I don't know about warm cookies. But
I saw that tweet.
Yeah. But I want people to realize that there has to be a sense of urgency, not just with these policies on healthcare, also with defunding the police, because this also affects white people in poor communities too, because it's also a class issue.
Yeah.
For us black people, it's race and class is intertwined, but it's also a class issue too. Let's be real. And so if you don't have a sense of urgency when it comes to these policies, you're going to look at it as, oh, well, we just got to elect the right people and we just got to go out and vote and things like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, that may do a little bit, but.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because it's so frustrating because that seems to be the core divide between us leftists who are third partiers or who don't even do electoralism at all, and leftists who are trying to take over the Democratic Party, or people who consider themselves leftists. The people in the Democratic Party, it seems like what they're focusing on is just getting these progressive candidates elected. They're more focused on that side of things, and they're less focused on policy and actually making demands. Whereas I feel like those of us who are pushing for the third party angle, it's not even like we're focused on electoralism necessarily. It's that we need some sort of bargaining power against the two-party system, and that the third party is like our organizing place where we can find like-minded people who are actually trying to challenge these policies and not just accept these public option, Cobra expansion, keep fracking, keep oil pipelines, more infrastructure for that type of thing. We're the ones who are actually hard line, standing by our left-wing principles and not negotiating for the sake of getting, incremental politicians elected. But I think we're having a misunderstanding across that barrier there, where they think we're right wing or something just because we call out Democrats on policy and stuff like that. When it's like, no, what we're trying to do is pull them left, like we were saying during the election, like all those Biden supporters. Oh, once he gets elected, we'll help you pull him left. Well, we're trying to pull him left, guys. Why are you attacking us?
Let's be real. Okay, so I think you're gonna laugh at this one.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so before the election, everybody was like, we just need to move Biden to the left. Everything you own in the box to the left. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's my brain. But when they said that, we were like, okay, bet. He won. We'll try to move him to the left. And now there is a literal march to advocate and push for Medicare for all. And now you have some of those same people going, we just gotta, we can't do that. What are you doing, man?
And they're the same people who were doing that during Force the Vote, too.
Yeah.
The same exact people who are against Force the Vote are against this march. It's like there's no way we can do it right.
They're like, put Biden to the left. And they were like, and we started to push him to the left. Not like that.
And that's when I opened my eyes to it. Because at the beginning, I remember the very beginning of the Force the Vote stuff. I was like, I thought it was a good strategy.
Yes.
You know, I thought maybe Jimmy was a little bit adversarial. I could understand why people were turned off.
I get it.
But but at the same time, it was like, it doesn't matter what he's saying. The points that he's making are true. So regardless of how rude you think he's being or friendly, whatever it is, that doesn't matter as much as the fact that we need to force the vote on Medicare for all. We shouldn't be just rubber stamping Nancy Pelosi. You know, the left needs to exert influence. He was right. And then, so I, at the beginning, kind of like, this is before I got heavily involved in Twitter stuff. I was kind of just starting to get started. You know, I wasn't sure where the factions were, what people thought, what was going on. And then I started to realize that the people who were going after Jimmy, you know, they're the same people who supported voting for Biden. They're the same people who support the incrementalism all the time. Yeah. And so I started to notice this connection of, oh, well, it seems like Jimmy's the only one here actually trying to push people left. And once I realized that, it was like I understood what was happening in all of these divides on that issue. And then now with the March for Medicare for All, you know, they get upset because there was that mistake where somebody who was, I guess, a neo-Nazi, who was in Charlottesville or something, ended up being one of the speakers. Immediately taken down. Immediately taken off. You explain it. Explain it first.
It wasn't even a mistake. It was a troll. That's the crazy part.
So what happened? So explain. I don't know the full context on that.
Apparently, somebody who was a troll somehow got wind of the march and I guess try to either get in so that they can make a banner or something so that they can advertise this Nazi or whatever to be a speaker. And I forgot which publication it was that interview. They went to the Nazi and they asked him if he was aware, and he had absolutely no idea.
Oh, so he wasn't even involved in it.
He was not involved at all. He had no idea about this at all. And they fixed the issue, and now they put contingencies in place so that this wouldn't happen again. But this wasn't even a mistake by them. It was more just a troll trying to infiltrate just to make them look bad.
Trying to trick the March for Medicare for All so that we would put somebody in there so that then, oh, look, you put a Nazi on there. You can't trust these organizers, guys.
Yeah. And it's
almost like it was a setup.
Yeah. And we were like, no. And now you have people who are constantly going, oh, but you guys made a mistake. And so we shouldn't just march for Medicare for all with you guys. And it's like, okay. And here's my point. If you want to not march for it, fine, go ahead. Make your own march.
Yeah, exactly.
Make your own march. And anybody who is saying anything, I'm gonna put this out to you right now. I challenge you. If you think that you can do a 42 city march within 5-6 months, if you think you can organize one and make it bigger, than what the Medicare for
I'd be happy with it.
March people doing, do it, please. I don't care if I don't care if you get it bigger and better than we get. Good, because that means it's about the policy.
Well, and that's like decentralized organizing. If you think about it, we're organizing our march with people who trust us and agree with us. Yeah. If you're not one of those people who trust us and agree with us, but you want Medicare for all, organize your own march, even on the same day. Why can't we coordinate it so that it's on the same day? Doesn't mean we're allies. Doesn't mean that you think that we're on the same side. Whatever it is, we're just supporting the same policy.
Yeah, because people are dying. They're dying.
I mean, we want healthcare for the people we don't like, right? Even the people we don't like get healthcare.
Yeah, we're literally going to be holding vigils for the people who died because they don't have healthcare or they're underinsured. We're literally holding vigils, candlelit vigils for them.
Isn't that amazing, though? It's amazing that we just had a global pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of Americans just died.
Yes.
And it wasn't the right time to force the vote on Medicare for all. It's too soon to even do the public option. I don't really need to realize the goalposts move, and they basically, what happens is people say whatever will appease us in the time.
Yeah.
And then when conditions change, there will be a new excuse made to appease us so that we won't ask for the whole cake. They want to only give us little nibbles. And it's just by changing the excuse.
But it's killing us.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy to me. People, I had somebody online the other day. It was ridiculous. They were like, "Oh, if you could censor Jimmy Dore to get healthcare for everybody, would you do it?" And I'm like, well, I don't want to set a precedent for censorship, but how ridiculous is it that you want us to give up one right? You want me to start agreeing with censorship when most countries around the world have universal healthcare. So what? We're supposed to give away some of our rights to get healthcare, which is a right that everybody around the world, even developing countries, give healthcare to all of their people. Even places like Russia and China give healthcare to all their people.
What kind of question was that? What the hell?
Well, the whole point was I perceived it as them wanting to portray me as a Jimmy Dore loyalist. See, look, he won't censor Jimmy Dore because he cares more about Jimmy Dore than healthcare for everybody. That was the implication of it.
Jimmy Dore cares more about
I don't agree with censorship, and I want healthcare. What? Say
Jimmy Dore cares more about healthcare than he cares about Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Dore doesn't even care about himself. He just wants the healthcare.
If he cared about himself, why would he be doing the things that makes everybody hate him?
I don't care about. Look, Jimmy. Look, with all due respect, I care more about healthcare than I do about you. Trust me.
Same.
And I
think you froze there.
I just don't care about the personality. I care about the politics.
You froze out there, but I completely agree with you. I'm sure Jimmy would even agree with us that we should care more about everybody having healthcare than him. Ooh, what's going on? Frozen.
Having trouble connecting, whatever. Okay.
Oh, there we are. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, you kind of froze out for a minute there.
Yeah,
but
it's the internet.
I generally heard your point that, I think Jimmy would agree with us that healthcare for everybody is more important than him.
Yeah.
The person's implication was, what they were saying was that basically Jimmy is counterproductive to Medicare for all, and so he should just shut up because that would help us get it easier.
Okay.
What?
Okay, I'm gonna say something. People are gonna get mad, but I don't care. Your hate for your love for Medicare of single payer healthcare has to be greater than your hate for Jimmy Dore. I'm gonna repeat. Your love for single payer healthcare has to be greater than your hate for Jimmy Dore.
Tell that to Sam Cedar.
Yeah. That being said, if you see this march and you don't want to do it, make a march.
Oh no.
You advocate like crazy for it.
Oh, you froze for a second there, but I'm back.
Oh my gosh.
No, we're good though.
This is crazy. And yes, Trish, yes, Trish, it's just a distracting to distract us from fighting. And the thing is like, look, we don't need people to sit there and start criticizing about something that we all agree. Why are we criticizing something that we all agree on? It doesn't make sense. So my thing is like, you know what? You don't like the way we're doing it, then do it a different way, but make sure that you get it done. Because guess what? If we can get this off the ground right now, the March for Medicare for All is in 42 cities. 42. And so that being the case, if you guys can get another 42 cities, great. Because I am sick and tired of seeing people dying. I just had surgery last week. Wait, a few days ago, a couple days ago, I had surgery. And I know for a fact that I'm going to get a bill in the mail.
Yeah. You must have a lot of bills, like medical bills with your like dialysis and stuff like that. I can't imagine how expensive that is.
You have no idea. A dialysis treatment before any other drugs administered, even for how much they charge for the nursing and things like that, is $400 per day.
That's so crazy you say that.
3 times a week, 52 times a year, and I've been doing it for 14 years.
And so many people can't afford that. Like, to some people, $400 for something like that, like that's like a luxury. Like, they can't afford that much money for healthcare.
No.
They have to ration it.
I got the bills to prove it. I got the invoices from Medicare to prove it. And the thing is that you got so many people who they are like, for instance, we were at the pharmacy a couple of days ago, and the lady was there. She was all happy-go-lucky, getting her meds and stuff. And then they said, "Oh, that would be $78 and some change." And I'm like, "Oh, $78?" And she's like, $78? I've never paid that much before. And they were like, "Well, do you have your insurance?" That's the key word. Do you have your insurance? And she brought out her card, and I can tell from here that it probably wasn't, Medicare and Medicaid. But what if she didn't have it?
And it's so crazy because even with insurance, sometimes things are ridiculously expensive. Like a few years ago, I came back from Nepal. I did a journalism internship in Nepal. And when I came back, I thought I had a parasite or something. Ooh. And, while I was awaiting the test results, they were going to just prescribe me the medicine anyway because it wasn't harmful just to take it anyway. And so I go to the pharmacy to fill this prescription for one pill with my insurance. It was like $300, $400. So I just didn't get it. I just bought. There was an over-the-counter version for $20. But they want to make me for one pill spend $300 or $400. Like, what is that? What if I had a real parasite eating me alive on the inside and I can't afford a $400? I'm a college student. I'm working 3 jobs. How can I afford a $300 for one pill? And it reminds me of Joe Manchin's daughter. I think she owned or ran EpiPen. She raised the price on EpiPens by like 100% or something to $300 for an EpiPen. And it's like,
Joe Manchin's daughter?
Joe Manchin's daughter. Yeah, you can look it up. A few years ago, this happened.
Holy shit.
It's crazy. So he's connected to Big Pharma, right?
Oh, definitely.
Lots of politicians. I mean, people don't realize, people think of the Democrats as the lesser of two evils. But when you look at big money, when you go to opensecrets.com and look at who gets the most money from Israel Lobby, from Big Pharma, from the banking industry, from things like that, it's always, Democrats and Republicans 1 and 2. The same interests give money to both sides because they're hedging their bets no matter who wins. Mm-hmm. So both parties are corporate owned. It's just a slightly different flavor of it. Back to that healthcare topic. I mean, my mom, she, a few years ago, got in a car accident. The car T-boned her on the driver's side. She got stuck in the car. They had to bring a machine in to remove her from the vehicle.
Oh my gosh.
Luckily, she was fine. No physical injuries or anything. But she was, distressed when they pulled her from the vehicle. And she was begging the paramedics, "Don't rush me to the hospital. I can't afford the ambulance fee." And so literally they made a compromise with her, like, you need to go to the hospital, but we won't turn the lights on and we won't speed because it'll be cheaper for you if we just drive you the speed limit there. And isn't that crazy, though? She just got in a car accident, and her first instinct is, no, please don't rush me to the hospital. I can't afford it. I can't afford it. So many people go through that. In the richest country in the history of the world.
Okay, people in the comments, I want you guys to, if you guys, have anybody that that's from another country, let them see that part that he just explained, that Kobi just explained, because this is what we're going through. And anybody who's basically pick your country, because they all basically have universal healthcare except for us. Let them, have people say, look, you guys in the United States, you guys need universal healthcare because what you guys go through is horrible. It is inhumane because your mother should have never had to deal with that. And there are times where, I felt like, well, I need to go to the hospital, but I just didn't want to use the ambulance because I know I'll be charged. Oh, yeah. And I've had to use it way more times than I would have liked. But it's supposed to be a service that is used so that you can get to the hospital. They can keep you stabilized so you can get to the hospital quickly so that they can save your life.
Yeah. And it sucks so much as like a low wage worker,
that's
for
what
years.
sucks even more.
I've hated this idea that whenever I want to go to a therapist or whenever I want to go get a checkup or whenever I want to get something done, and if I only have $100 in my bank account, and I have to decide, do I want to be able to afford gas and food and all these things for the week, or do I want to go, get treated for these health problems I have? And I end up choosing not to treat the health problems simply because, I can barely afford to, and I know that if I pay these copays, I'm going to be down to basically nothing. Yeah. And luckily I live at home. I have the privilege of living with my parents still, so it's okay. But in 2 years, when I get done with my master's degree and I come back to the U.S., I'll be 26. I won't be on my parents' healthcare plan anymore. You know what I mean? Then it gets real. Then you have to actually find a job that gives you healthcare, or barely scrape by and never have much more than what you need to survive.
You'll be living on a pittance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what most people, I feel so lucky that I live at home, but it's crazy to me that millions of people, have to suffer through that economic pain with the healthcare pain on top of it. And then we feel like we have the right to go tell other countries they do human rights abuses.
Pot me kettle, right? Yeah. I know.
Anything else you want to cover today? I got to go soon.
Yeah. I just wanted to, give our last thoughts on this and, what have you. It's kind of funny because I was just thinking about, you were saying about how you're fortunate to still live at home. And I was thinking to myself, capitalism is actually ruining relationships. How many, because I made a tweet about this a few weeks ago, and I basically said, how many of us can't afford to go out on a date anymore to meet people? We can't.
Because things cost money to go do things, to meet people, to do things with them. It costs money.
Yeah. Like restaurants cost money. Movies cost money. Shows cost money. Condoms cost money. It's all cost money. So guess what? Yeah. We're just going to have to stay home and be, little people who are what's the word for it? Celibate. And not have kitty kids. This is why the birth rate is going down.
It sucks so much because, while I do like the privilege of living at home and not having to worry about being homeless, I mean, I want to be an adult. You know what I mean? I want to be able to live in my own place. I want to be able to have my own job and do my own things and not have my parents breathing over my neck. It damages our relationship. It damages my relationship with my friends because what if I can't afford to go meet up with them somewhere to go do other things? Yeah. So I'm basically trapped in this box because I can't afford to get out of it. And that's what capitalism is doing. Look at the statistics for the number of Gen Zers not moving out of their parents' houses. Yeah. It's just because we can't afford to do it. Yeah. And, boomers will mock us for that sometimes, but you're the one who made the economy that way that's putting us in this situation.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just something that just came to mind. I'm a millennial and I can't afford to live on my own. So I'm imagining anybody that's Gen Z, it's like my heart goes out to them because it's just like, wait a minute. If you're a young person who's Gen Z and who has you're able bodied, but you just can't afford to live on your own, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. If we lived in a society where all your basic needs are met, your food, water, shelter, healthcare, I'd have been moved out years ago. I'd be living on my own, doing my own thing. But it's crazy. I'm going to get my master's degree in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
And a big motivator for that was, well, at least I'll have 2 years of student loans to sustain myself, you know what I mean? And to get all this experience so that when I come back, at least I'll be in debt with a master's degree instead of, still just living at home in debt. It's so crazy that I take on more debt just to get skills and kick the can down the road. But at some point, I'm going to have to deal with this giant mass of $50,000, $60,000 of student loan debt. I mean, that's insane.
Man, we can talk so much about all these different things. Look,
every topic. I'm like too intersectional. I don't focus on one thing. I'm everywhere.
I know. We jumped around a lot, and this was an awesome conversation.
I like
all 50 people who are watching. Thanks for sticking around for the ride. I'm going to be doing some last thoughts here because I usually do about 2 hours, and I wanted to communicate with the people on the stream. Okay. But I just want to thank you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I think I got my bio or my handle there. It's ProPeace97. Mm-hmm. On there, you'll have a Medium page. I don't really post on that anymore. I am starting a Substack soon. I am starting a YouTube soon, but I have the Substack started. I don't remember the name. I think it's just ProPeace97 also. Haven't posted much yet. I'm getting ready for college and whatnot, but basically ProPeace97 is the main place you can find me. And yeah, just message me there. I'm very open to talking to people about stuff.
Awesome. Please come back. I would love to have you back again.
Oh, I'd love to be back. Thank you so much, Jay.
You're very welcome. And
have a good one. Should I just X out the stream?
Yeah, I got you. So, yeah, that was a great conversation. We kind of went everywhere. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, of course, Julian Assange, and we basically covered all of our everything that we wanted to cover within the time span. It's just I realized that his brain works exactly like mine, which is a good thing and also a not so good thing because we just like boom, 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 boom. But I hope that you guys were able to connect everything as we were speaking because my brain is I'm so goofy as hell. I'm sorry. I want to thank all of you guys for being here. I'm also wanting to go back to some of the comments, because I want to interact with you guys a little bit more. Like I always say, you guys, I learn from you, you learn from me. And Hollyhorn, you said Heather something. Is it Heather Mansion? Maybe. But it kind of sucks having that last name because now you're kind of giving away your privilege. It's like my name is Mansion, like rich, whatever. Let me see. The whole thing with healthcare here in the United States, you got a lot of people who feel like they're trapped. And for a country that believes in freedom, that is ironic that we feel like we have to trap them in order to keep them when it comes to healthcare. Because there are some of us where we'll have a job and our wages won't even be that good. But when it comes to healthcare, it's like that's all we can afford. So we have to deal with what we have. And let's say, for instance, you do make, I don't know, $15 an hour. Let's just throw that out there. How much money is being taken out for your premiums? So you're even if you're making $15 an hour, you're still making less than $15 an hour because you have to pay all that money through your healthcare. Or um, let's let's say that you make $20 an hour, but they're charging you what it would equal out to is $15 an hour for your healthcare. So you're never making exactly what you think. And the fact that your healthcare is tied to your job is something that I think that it's a culture and a trend that needs to die. Because if we keep it alive, then people will keep going through the exact same things that we've always been going through, especially in regards to the pandemic. I don't know, you know, how big the march will be in Orlando for the Medicare for all. I hope it will be massive. I That's what we all hope for. But if you can make it out to a city close to you, then please do. Um, and don't just do it for yourself. Do it for other people in your life. Think about other people who are in your life that don't have health care, or they're so concerned with their co-pays and their premiums. Do it for them too, because you have so many people out there who think that nobody cares about them. I want them to see people like you out there because you do care. Uh, the bulk of everybody who is watching right now are people who are always, following me whenever I have a live stream. And you are people who have compassion. You're people who are kind. And I want everyone else to see that. Um, you all are fighting the good fight, but you all can only do so much individually because capitalism is weighing down on you too. Some of you are probably watching me at work, but you really don't have that much free time to catch, someone like me during another point in your day. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. Um, I just want you guys to continue to keep hope. Also, I want you guys to do this, and it's not for me. I want you to do this for yourself. Use your imagination and imagining how much better your life will be once we have some of these policies in place. Put it in your mind's eye that, oh man, we already started the Green New Deal and we have a federal jobs guarantee, and you're seeing like construction crews building track for a high speed rail, or um, you just got your raise to a living wage. You were making crappy money, and now you are actually at a living wage. So now you're planning in your head where you want to go to, on vacation next year. I I know this is a lot of what people who are capitalists say, and they always throw this out there, but it's got to have some merit to it. We need a leftist vision board. Like, if I go out there and I fight for these policies, and if we continue to stay together, then this is what we'll have. And it doesn't have to be anything like over the top or opulent, like a big, huge house or a mansion or a really nice car, but it's being able to have enough so that you can go on a vacation to out of the country if you've never been, or it's being able to go to school without having student debt, or being able to, go to the hospital without ever having to worry about, hell, not even going to the hospital, but going to a regular checkup because, oh, it's time for my checkup. And you're just doing everything quickly. You're doing preventative medicine. You're going to the doctor just to make sure everything's running correctly. And not just to your doctor for physical checkups, but also a psychiatrist or a counselor for mental checkups. Think of these things in a positive way and how it will impact your life. I want you to make yourself excited for these policies. You know what I mean? It's kind of like what's the name? I don't want to say like a positive manifestation, but if you continue to keep encouraging yourself and others around you of what could be, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, you're instilling a hope, not just for yourself, but for others, so that we can stop being oppressed in so many different ways. You know, yeah. Dental work. Exactly. That's, I want to go to the dentist, I need to go. So, uh, yeah, I guess, positive, self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I appreciate that. Um, and so I think that if we can put ourselves in a mental state where we know this can be done, and if we continue to try to put that in front of ourselves, my hope is that we push ourselves and others in a positive direction. Will it always work? No, it's not, because you have people who have a certain type of mindset, but it could affect enough people. Like for instance, when you're at work and every single time somebody starts complaining, you bring up, aspects of workplace democracy to your workmates. Wouldn't it be nice if? Wouldn't it be cool if? Can't wait till we can blank. You know, all these different things, because people are so used to the debilitating circumstances that they're in that they feel like there's no way out. Um, Create a third option in people's minds, because people are chosen. Either you can have your job and live in debilitating circumstances, or you can die. And it's like, no, we're going to make a third option. We're going to have our job. It's going to be a living wage, and we're going to own the means of production. Create the third option in people's minds, and they'll always recognize, hey, there's a third option, because that's the way capitalism operates. It's like, it's just like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Either die in a total vacuum of space or tell me what you thought of my poem. It's like, well, I don't want to do either, because number one, if you're going to kill me one way, you're going to kill me another way. So I might as well, yeah, I just brought up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, whatever. Um, but you always got to create that third option. It's like, do you want to drown? Do you want to burn? And it's like, can we mix them together and make myself put me in a hot tub? Make that third option something that's better for us than what we're presented with, by an oppressive system. I don't know. That was pretty much the weirdest thing I ever said or came up with. And yeah, why the hell are you guys watching? But I want to thank you all. Abdul Aziz, what is the minimum wage in the United States? $7.25 an hour. Yeah. Yes. The illusion of scarcity. Fear is the only mechanism through which control can be effectively exerted. I don't know if I can actually. I don't know if I can actually debate that. The reason why I don't know if I can is because fear has been working. I just don't want people to operate on fear anymore. I want them to operate on positive possibilities of what could be. Fear is exhausting. And for people, you don't want that. From the neighborhood that I'm from, you get tired of being in fear. And I don't want people to be in fear anymore. I want people to rise up and demand better for themselves. You get you get sick and tired of it because then, you know, people soon become apathetic. And then you look out and you see people who are sleeping on the streets begging for money and they don't have the resources that they need. Nah, nah, not for any human. Mm-mm. That's unacceptable. No. And I don't want to be the cliche hope and change. That's nah. We need more than just hope. We need a plan of action. And I hope I used the word ironically that we do that soon. But I don't want to go too far over time, but I want to thank you all for joining in. And I will be there for the FHL Roundtable this Thursday at 4. So thank you all so much. For anybody who sent a super chat, I thank you. I didn't see any, but just in case if I missed it, thank you. So I will see you all in the next one.